drafting worldwide, wide. Welcome back to the Revit Garage project. In the last video we went through and tried out a lot of different options for roof styles, changing the floor plan to basically give it a little bit of character, how that affected the roofs. So in this video we're back to that original layout that is basically just that 30 by 40 layout with a gable and roof on it. So this is the minimum requirements for the project. So I just want to go through this a little bit and show you all the details of this and all the fine points to make it look exactly how it's supposed to look, and then we'll go through and create a roof plan, adjust that view a little bit as well. So the first thing I want to look at is my levels. So I'm gonna come over here to my east elevation. Right now my roof is at 12 feet 8.5 inches, so that's pretty high. Basically what I was going to be doing is my foundation was going to come up to here, and then I was going to use 2x4s that are 8 feet long, so I would have 4.5 inches for the 3 plates plus this 4 inches, so it should be 8 feet 8.5. and whenever I do that I end up with that right there, and whenever I look at the front of this I can see I still have clearance for my 7-foot doors. I'll double check to make sure those are 7-foot high doors, and I should have plenty of room for the hardware for the overhead doors as well. So we're going to go ahead and leave it at that for right now, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this roof itself, and I'm actually just going to delete this because there's a few different things wrong. I wanted to go through with you how to actually put the correct roof on. First thing I'm going to do is go to my roof plan, and you can see the roof below, or the walls below, and that is basically going to be an underlay over here in your view properties. It says underlay, and the base level is first floor. So if I would turn that off or have none, I'm not going to be able to see anything. So the roof is cutting, that roof plane is cutting way above where the walls would be, so you wouldn't actually see them. So, and I'll show you a little bit more of that whenever we set up our actual roof plan. So I'm just going to turn that underlay back on, stretch this down a little bit so I can actually see it, and go down to up to underlay, and I'm going to make that first floor. And whenever I put a roof in, I'm just going to click on this roof button, and right now the one that I have selected is basic roof wood rafter. So we're not actually going to use rafters, so we're going to use trusses, and they're engineered to use smaller components of wood. Very often you can get away with a bottom cord, which would be the part that stretches on the bottom of the truss, not the angled part. You can use a 2x4, so we're going to, and then the top cord you can use 2x4 a lot of times with this kind of span. So I'm going to edit type, I'm going to duplicate, and I'm just going to call this my roof, and I'm going to go into the structure, and instead of the structure being 7.5 inches, which is a 2x8, I'm going to make this 3.5 inches, which is a 2x4, and then I keep my plywood sheathing and I keep my asphalt shingles. There would also be felt paper or some sort of synthetic felt in between here, and I say OK, and I say OK again, and now I'm going to make sure that I have a 1-foot overhang the whole way around, and instead of the slope defining feature being turned on, I'm just going to leave that off, and I'm going to go the whole way around the building like this. I'm going to make sure those connect, click modify, And then I'm going to make that line. I'm going to hold Control down, and I'm going to choose that line. And I'm going to make both of those slope defining, which will define my gable. And the project criteria says a 412 roof pitch, so I'm going to change that 9 to a 4. So for every 12 inches of horizontal run, there are 4 inches of vertical rise for that roof. And I'm going to come down here and let's see if there's anything else I can select in here. I'm going to go ahead and say finish, and again, with this selected, I can come through and change some of the features of this roof. So Plum Cut is basically how I finish the tail of the truss off, or the tail of the rafter. And what we're going to do is a 2-cut plumb, which basically means that you cut straight down, and then whatever's left over from the fascia gets cut to the left. So I can just draw a real quick little picture just to give you an example of that, where I would cut down, and then if there's anything left over, and this height right here becomes my fascia height. That's kind of hard to see without actually cutting that off, but this is basically what the rafter would look like right here. So that would be a 2-cut plumb. And if I just had these two joined together like that, that would be a plumb cut, or one cut plumb. And the problem with this is my fascia ends up being very big, very long. So I can control my fascia height by adding that extra line in there and cleaning that up. And we might be able to see that in another view of this drawing later on. So basically, that's a real quick little look at that. And I'm going to select the roof again. Again, this is going to be a 2-cut plumb, and my fascia depth or height is going to be 4 inches on this one. And I do want this to be a truss, not a rafter. It's basically how it sits on that top plate. And everything else should be good. And this is how my roof works out. So I can go to my 3D mode, and I can look at this. And you can kind of see with this, we'll look at this side right here. If I zoom in on this right here, that's kind of what I was talking about with that 2-cut plumb. If I were to just select that and change that to a plumb cut, it does that. And 2-cut plumb, it does that. And this is basically where my plate is, so that truss is gonna sit right on top of that plate. If I was rafter framing this instead of with a truss, it would actually go down in with a bird's mouth, and you can see that by changing that to rafter, where it drops down there, and then you have that bird's mouth. We are going to leave it as the truss though. Okay, then I go back to my 3D mode, and I'm basically just going to make sure all these walls connect to the roof. So an easy way to do this is I can just hover my cursor over top of a wall. I can hit tab and then select it, and it selects that entire perimeter. Then I'm going to attach top base and select that roof. So right now I have the roof that I need on here with all the details figured out. So then the next thing to do is to actually look at that roof plan and see what I actually want to see. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this is a very simple roof, so I could probably leave this as 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to kind of match what the other ones are at. I'm going to change it to 3/16 for right now. I'm going to bump these cameras or elevation symbols out a little bit. And right now, basically what's happening is my cut plane is cutting that peak or the ridge of the roof off. So what I really want to do is I want to look above this. So I can come in here to my properties, my view properties. So whenever I have nothing selected, that's my view properties for this roof plan. And whenever I come in here, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my underlay off for now. And I'm also going to, let's see, looking for view range. So under the extents, view range, edit. Well, this is kind of confusing, but basically the top, the furthest most up that I can see is 7'6", so that roof is higher than 7'6". I'm just going to change this to something like 12, and I say apply. And I'm going to change the cut plane to 12 also, so that I'm not cutting through this roof. And now you can see I'm actually looking above this roof, and I can see the ridge line and then the outline of the entire roof. So then the next thing I can do, here's where it gets a little bit more confusing. I can just say okay for now. I'm going to go back into this, and I'm actually going to have this bottom level come down a little bit. So I'm going to say something like, I'm going to try -2 inches, -2 inches, did nothing. Let's try minus a foot, work our way back, and it's not showing me anything, none of the walls. So what I really want to be able to see is the walls underneath. In the next video, we'll go through and set this up so that it actually looks good in the view, and we show all the features that we want to show, like the hidden lines underneath representing the walls, the annotations for arrows, any notes that might be on there, the overhang, and then we'll add it to a sheet as well.